Hey, welcome back, everybody. Today is, of course, how did I get here? Which is really sales management tips, blunders, and topics for sales leaders, sales managers, and owners of company that would like to understand their sales team a little better. So today we're going to talk about a couple tips and blunders, and the topic is going to be on hiring salespeople. So I'll give you some blunders I had in hiring salespeople as a sales manager, a director of sales. There were times where you just needed to hire someone, and so you found somebody, you hired them, and it's getting harder and harder to find people today. And the way we look at people, it's almost like sales has changed so much, so is looking for salespeople has changed. So there's several different things. And when I started looking for salespeople, I had these things called bias. I remember moving down to Dallas from Chicago, and one salesperson I interviewed said to me in Dallas, said, "Are you from Arlington Heights?" That's where I lived in Chicago. He goes, "I went to high school there." So we talked for about 10, 15 minutes about going to high school. Guess what? He got hired. Guess what? He didn't make it. I had a bias. I let my emotions get away with us. So a lot of things we do in looking for salespeople is the same thing we should be doing as looking for sales. To me, uh, prospecting to a salesperson is like recruiting to a sales manager. It's painful, but it's extremely costly. If you really iron out what it costs you to make a bad sales hire, I'll bet you'll realize how much a ridiculous amount of money it is. I mean, first, the time it takes you to find somebody. Rack up those hours in a day. See how many hours that is. What you use. Do you use testing? Do you use recruiting? And then how long they stay with you before we get rid of them. We find out they're no good. How many months is that of wasted money? And then how much in wasted opportunities, right? Where leads came in, we didn't close them because we had a terrible salesperson. So if you really racked all that up, it's pretty expensive. So that means when we go out looking for someone, we should be like treating it like closing a million or a couple $1 million deal. It should be very priceless. So a couple things have changed though in looking for salespeople. And while part of it is there are less salespeople, and it's always been hard to find the hunters. First thing you got to do is identify what you're looking for. That was my big problem as a young sales manager. I'd get the resume. The receptionist would call me up front and say, "Tom, there's a candidate out front." I'd grab the resume, and as I'm walking down the hallway, I'm looking at this resume going, "Okay, what am I going to ask this person?" That was my biggest mess up. So we got to do this ahead of time. And there's a couple things, but I want you to really think about why it's going to be more frustrating than before, or it doesn't have to be, but it will be if you don't do things correctly. And that is really taking a look at this type of thing. Right now, there are about 75 million baby boomers. In about 2.5 years, to 3 years, they're leaving the workforce. You got 65 million Gen Xers. You got 75 million millennials, and you got 65 million Gen Zs. It takes 3 generations to fill up a workforce. So we're going to get rid of this one, and these are going to be our 3 generations. By the way, that is minus 10 million people in the workforce. It's going to be a little worse than that. Not only is it minus 10 million, but the baby boomers, like I'm a baby boomer, and obviously when my parents, I love them to death. When they left me my name. But baby boomers are the biggest wealth generators around, $55 trillion in wealth. Estimated they're probably going to leave 35 million of that to these people, which probably means about 10% less of these people are going to have to work or want to work because they won't need to. So first part of our problem is our workforce is going to be depleted by 10 million plus a percentage of them that just don't want to work. So it's going to be harder to find salespeople. It's going to be harder to find people. And salespeople have changed. Those Gen Zs, Gen X, millennials, they're a group of learners. When they wanted to do oil change, they just had to go on this thing and learn how to do it, right? When they want to learn something, they go on, you can learn anything on YouTube. So they're a group of learners. And the question is, or actually the statement is, if they're not learning, they're leaving you. So we got to really look at your company, because how many times have we hired somebody because of their culture, right? Or hired them because of skill, and we got rid of them because of culture. There's probably some of you that could right now type in chat how many you hired and this didn't work. So we really got to examine, and you can't blame them on this. You got to examine your own culture. Have you really defined the culture enough so someone knows what it's like? Because they'll leave you so quick if there is no culture, if everyone does what they want. So really think about the culture you currently have and the culture you want in your company, and how definitive is it, so that when someone comes on, they can go, I like this culture, or I hate this culture, right? It should not be, I'll trade dollars for hours. Because if you still have that type of culture, people are trading dollars for hours, the new generations aren't going to stick with you. Some will, the ones that don't want to work. But don't blame millennials or Gen Zs or Gen X for being non-workers or don't want to do what you want. That's the old generation. Baby boomers would stick around and work hard to try and make a buck. These people will leave you quicker than ever before. So what kind of culture do you have? And one of the things to do the culture, I want you to really get rid of those words you put on the wall of the building, right? Because people put up words and they say, oh, we got culture. Yeah, well, what does it mean? What do those words really mean? How do you judge whether those words truly uphold your strategy? How do you judge whether those words truly uphold what you need to do to get to where you're going? So you got to create core behaviors around core values. So if one of your culture values is education or growth, then what you really need to do is create a behavior, and that behavior should be you can learn anything, or you can you must learn something, or you must teach something every day. That has to happen. So is that happening? See, I can put that behavior out there, and then once I hire you, I can say, hey, so what did you learn today? What didn't you learn today? I can do that on a constant basis, and constantly looking at what are you learning. And if you worked for me and I said to you every day, and by the way, the other people that understand our culture in the company said to you on a daily basis, hey, what'd you learn today? Or what'd you teach somebody today? You come to work for us after 2 weeks, you might be sitting there going, I hate it there because everybody keeps asking me to learn something. Or I love it there because everybody keeps helping me to learn. So what's your culture? How do you know it's alive? You got to create core behaviors. And you must, when you hire people, say, this is our culture and this is how we're going to measure you. Right? The other way we're going to measure you is whether you sell anything. But by the way, if you don't fit in our culture, you're going to be gone quicker than ever before. So you really got to think about what it is that you're trying to do to create a place where people want to work. And it's not by putting pool table inside your kitchen. That is not culture. So think about the times that you have sat there and hired someone and they left because they didn't like it there. I want to know whether or not you like it before we start. So I got to have team interviews with you. I got to have culture interviews with you. And I got to show you this is a place that has a strict culture. So I'll give you one example. Let's pretend I worked in a young kid. I worked in a drugstore on one side of town. And when I'm working there, they said, hey, Tom, we close at 9 o'clock. So about 8:45, 20 to 9, we turn off all the lights, stay away from the front door. That way it takes us about 15 minutes to clean up and close out, and we get out of here at 9 o'clock. And go to work for Move, and maybe go to work for another drugstore across the town. And they say, hey, Tom, we close at 9, but we have doctors and hospitals around here. So and it takes us 15 minutes to clean up. So what we like to do is keep the lights on. If somebody needs to walk in at 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 9:15 to get a prescription, we want to help them. It only takes a couple extra minutes to close up then. Two totally different cultures, but it's really a hidden set of attitudes and beliefs. And by the way, which one of those do you want to be a customer of? See, the culture is probably the single most competitive advantage your company has. And it's the single most competitive advantage your company has to hire great salespeople. So there's some tips. You heard some of my blunders. That's the topic. We're going to get back to it and talk a little bit more about once you onboard salespeople, what makes it successful and what doesn't. But until then, how did I get here? We'll see you next week.